Welcome back to LonelyMan BGs, in this overview of the Battle of the Five Armies, an asymmetrical wargame by Armies Games. The Battle of the Five Armies is the younger, shorter, and easier brother of the War of the Ring, less grand in style and more tactical in nature. This game is designed for 2 players and typically lasts 2 to 3 hours in duration. In the game, one player will take control of the Free Peoples, a host of elves, dwarves, and men, and later, the Eagles. The other player will take on the role of the Shadow, sending forth armies of orcs, goblins, wargs, and bats. Let's start with a little geography. As you may already know, this battle takes place in the far north of Middle-earth, at the crags of Lonely Mountain. The board is split into 4 territories: Broken Lands in the east, the Central Valley, the southern spur of the mountain, and the eastern bank. Further, these territories are split up into individual regions in which armies and characters will move and attack. Some regions have fortifications or other settlements. The Shadow player will attempt to take over these locations in order to win the game. Fortifications are worth 4 points each, and the settlements are worth 2. The Shadow must earn 10 victory points in total to achieve victory. The Shadow player begins the game with a majority presence in the Broken Lands, amassing forces at the edge of the map in order to sweep the valley and flood the eastern bank. In addition, the Shadow has 2 mustering points within the mountains. Goblin forces assemble at each of these points, and once 5 have convened, the mountain pass opens up, and the forces can pour through and attack the Free Peoples. The Free Peoples begin the game with forces at the front gate of Erebor, at Ravenhill, at the ruins of Dale, and on the eastern spur of the mountain. The game is played through one main mechanic, the use of action dice, which allow players to recruit, move, and attack with armies, use special characters, and earn and play cards. Players will take turns spending their action dice until each player runs out. Let's see how a full turn works. At the beginning of a turn, the Free Peoples will decide whether or not they will activate generals in their command structure. The player can activate up to 3, and each general has his own special effect. Gandalf the Wizard, Dane Ironfoot of the Iron Hills, Thranduil the Elven King, and the Bard are all available at the beginning of the game, and the Lord of the Eagles can become active later on. For each activation token spent, the Free Peoples receives a leadership token, which is then immediately placed with Free Peoples armies. Leadership tokens improve both movement and the combat capabilities of an army. Next, for each general activated, the Shadow player is able to draw 1 fate tile. Once a tile is drawn, the player may choose to apply the effect of the tile, or draw a new one if able. Fate tiles each have a value, and if applied, then the value on the fate track increases. This is directly related to the Free People's victory, as once the fate track marker reaches 15, they win the game. Fate is also important, for as it increases, the Free People's player gains important characters. Bilbo arrives at fate value of 2, Thorin Oakenshield at 6, the Lord of the Eagles at 8, and Beorn at 11. The Shadow player will need to have at least 6 victory points by the arrival of Beorn, or they lose the game. These characters are critical to the victory of the Free Peoples, so the Shadow wishes to mitigate fate as much as possible. Fate tiles may also have this fate icon, and if so, the Free People's player draws a fate card, which is resolved immediately. Most of these are played on specific characters, even if the character is yet to enter the battle. The Eagles Are Coming, for example, adds 2 eagles to the Eagle's Eyrie, even though the eagle units won't enter the battle until the Lord of Eagles is in play. After fate is dealt, the Shadow player gains either leadership or great bats. This is equal to the number of action dice in the Shadow player's pool. Leadership tokens are placed with armies, as shown before, but bats are entirely different. The Shadow player will strategically place the great bats in territories, not just specific regions. These are then removed at the end of every turn. Bats can be used for 2 purposes. 1. To move armies. 2. To gain the combat card Vampire-like. This card allows the Shadow to discard a bat to inflict an additional damage during combat. After the placements of bats in leadership, the action round begins, which is where each player takes turns using an action dice from their pool. Let's go over the general duties of each die result. The muster and army results allow general movement, recruitment, and attacking actions to be taken. The character result can be used to move and attack with armies as well, but only if they have leadership. In addition, it can be used to move characters around the board. 2 special results can also be rolled: the Lidless Eye of the Shadow and the Will of the West of the Free Peoples. The Eye result is used for general goblin activation and recruitment. The Will of the West serves the function of a wild, allowing it to be used as any die result. The final result, the Event die, is used to draw and play cards. Throughout the game, event and story cards will be earned to a player's hand. Event cards are available to both players and offer effects such as moving armies or boosting defense. Story cards, on the other hand, are separated into decks, one for each faction. These cards can only be played by the expenditure of action dice, and they offer additional effects to that faction. The Shadow of the Necromancer, for example, enters a shadow-friendly fate tile to the fate pool. Elfin Lords, on the other hand, allows for amassing of elven forces at Ravenhill. The majority of combat will be had during this action dice phase. Combat takes into account a couple of things, ranging from terrain superiority, card effects, and leadership. Each player will roll their combat dice, maneuver using their unit cards, and apply damage to the enemy army. There's one character that we've neglected thus far in our explanation, and that is Bolg, son of Azog. Bolg can be mustered into play by the Shadow player. He is a formidable force and the leader of the Shadow Army. If the Free People's player is ever able to eliminate this leader from the game, they achieve victory immediately. This concludes our overview of Battle of the Five Armies. Thanks for watching.